for mortar rounds. And also another threat to maritime security is sabotage and arson. Now here I would like to pose an argument. If an ordinary criminal, stowaway or a drug trafficker, pirate or armed robber can breach your security, a much more committed, much more dedicated terrorist can certainly penetrate your defenses. So that's an argument I like to propose. And here, again, on the contrary, whatever the measures that you take to counter terrorism will help you in bringing other crime as well. Now, Sri Lankan waters had been prone to piracy at one point of time. But because of the certain action taken by the Navy and the other agencies in combating terrorism, the piracy incident went down to zero. There was not a single incident of piracy reported in Sri Lankan waters because of the action taken against possible terrorists. Then, just to recapture you about the local threat scenario from the terrorist activities, we have had suicide boats coming into our ports and attacking. We have had underwater saboteurs coming to our ports and attacking. We had the sea mines, improvised sea mines. We had we had moored sea mines laid by the LTTE on choke points or approaches to harbor. And we had limpet mines, that is magnetically attached to the bottom of the ship and exploding. And we had submersibles of different sizes and different shapes. And we had merchant ships being attacked and sunk. And we had the vehicle bomb threat against our ports and improvised explosive devices and sabotage and infiltrations. These are all the local terrorism threats that we experience against our ports. And also indirect fire from distant areas. Some of our ports were under mortar and artillery attack threat from the LTTE. And also the light aircraft attack was directed against Port of Colombo and Port of Trincomalee. Now, in conclusion of the threat, I can say that the Sri Lankan ports had been under threat for a long time from acts of terrorism and organized crime. And all the ports are vulnerable for terrorist attacks. So therefore, the need to maintain effective maritime security. So when you talk about maritime security, we have the International Maritime Organization who is dishing out all these security policies. And they found after the September 11th attack, an additional requirement to enhance maritime security, and they came up with a particular security regime called the International Ship and Port Facility Security Code. We were one of the first countries to implement the ISPS code. In fact, we had a head start because most of the recommendations in the ISPS codes were practiced in our ports, and I don't want to use the word, but we have a feeling somebody copied from us. And also, there are other international maritime regimes in place, like ISPS Code of Practice for Ports, then Megaport Initiative, that is to detect radioactive materials, and then the Container Security Initiative to detect explosives and other things. Now, in conclusion, I would make some recommendation based on vast experiences that we have gathered in defeating the most ruthless terrorist organization in the world, which even had international maritime capability. Now, these recommendations, we cannot implement them by ourselves alone. We need the support of the international community, and this is actually for the common good of our whole world. We have to strengthen international conventions dealing with maritime domain, because we are pretty old conventions we have. It is not updated to meet the present day requirement, because most of the international conventions that we have are dealing with state actors. So whenever there is a non-state actor is involved, the regulation is not very clear. And regulation of conventional small arms and explosives, these are internationally accepted regulations, hardly practiced. Now, a good example is 2007 October when we destroyed the ships. They had 100,000 mortar rounds and more than 1,000 kilograms of explosives. Right? If these explosives are marked, of course we later came to know where the origin was, but these are not effective. And cooperation to curb transnational crimes, because transnational crime syndicates and terrorists, most of the time they have nexus. And international partnership in intelligence sharing. This is a must. Because shipping is not local. Shipping is very international. Maritime domain is very international. So unless you have international intelligence sharing, you're not going to go anywhere. Then one area we suffered most, I think yesterday it was mentioned that terrorist financing, money collected by the Tamil diaspora communities in other countries were used to prolong the conflict here, right? Then, of course, regional maritime initiatives, and of course, we are part of the maritime domain awareness. Maritime domain awareness is basically knowing what is happening around us, knowing what the ships are doing, where they are going, where they are coming from, using whatever the possible sensors. It can be ships, it can be aircraft, it can be radars, it can be satellites, or it can be anything. That's very important for us to know what is happening around our country in the maritime domain. Then, of course, diplomatic pressure to dismantle maritime capabilities, that is the combat power of non-state actors. I think we should not permit anyone to carry weapons at sea other than the legally authorized navies or the Coast Guard. Right? Then also, port security. We have to maintain port security. Ports are considered one of the most corrupt places in many parts of the world. And a lot of smuggling take place, so we have to be strict on port security. And also develop the combined operations picture around the port and around the coast. And obviously we have to have coastal bases. The war started from our coast, and we are determined not to let that happen again. So therefore, not only in the northern and the eastern provinces, the coastal provinces of the north and the eastern province, we are determined to look after our entire coast, which include the rest of the country as well. Then also engage in anti-piracy operation. I think we have a wealth of experience. So we should contribute. We are doing, and we can even contribute more in anti-piracy operations. And then prepare to play a key role in now the disaster management. The disasters, whether it is man-made or natural, it's coming more frequent. So we should be geared, because disaster management, although it is not specifically under the maritime security, but it has a lot of connections with maritime security. And also strengthen Navy and the Coast Guard. That's another recommendation that I have come up with. And then enhance national legislations. We are not doing very well in national legislation. The Merchant Shipping Act is 1971, which is almost 40 years old. And it had been amended only once in 1988. Many of the instruments that we are practicing internationally in our ports, we have to incorporate them into national legislation, and then we will have more teeth to bite, more power to deal with the people who are not following the law of our country. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Admiral Columbage. We have time for 2 short questions. Yes, please. Can you bring the microphone to the front?
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's very interesting. I have specific interest in anti-piracy and some of the roles I play. I'm interested that you say that you want just Navy personnel or Navy vessels to be armed in anti-piracy.
I didn't really mean that. I said, when I said the dismantling of combat power of non-state actors, I didn't really mean in the pirate sense. What I said is, because we had a non-state actor who was armed to the teeth, right?
Yeah.
And they used the international system to buy weapons, buy ships, buy platforms, and they were operating. But in the case of piracy, even we are encouraging to have on-board security, and that need not necessarily be the military person. In the sense, not the Navy, serving the Navy people. In most cases, it is not. In most cases, it is like retired military, maybe special force personnel, SEALs. But they are legitimate. They are carrying the weapons legitimately because they have a government issuing the, go ahead, green light for them to operate. A government is issuing them weapons, and government is accountable. So that is what I meant.
Yeah, that's fine. What I was going to come on to was the fact that there are a number of merchant vessels that have got these mercenaries, if you like, the SEALs, the Special Forces guys, running around with weapons. But they can only run around with the weapons when they're on board and they're out past the international shipping lanes. because they cannot bring those weapons. For example, if they ship out of Gaul, for example, then they have to pick up the weapons on the way out. Now, do you think that's a hindrance to an anti-piracy operation, a government-run one? Are these mercenaries going to get in the way, or what's your opinion?
Well, I guess like carrying weapons on board a ship is a heavily debated matter because, you know, carrying a weapon means you are inviting more violence. And we have seen that in anti-piracy operations. I mean, initially we just gave in to their demands and we paid the ransom and got the crews out. But subsequently, like the South Korean, the Indian warship, they started attacking, I mean, the Alabama case, right? We started attacking them and we rescued them. And the result was they started using violence. So carrying a weapon on board a ship is a double-edged sword, I would say. But, I mean, that's what I said. If someone is carrying, it has to be a legitimate method. Not every mercenary should be armed on a ship because you are inviting more trouble and the crews don't like it. I mean, the crews will be very happy to surrender themselves without risking their life, go to wherever they are told to go, and their company pays the ransom, get out. Because I think this is a heavily, I mean, as a seafarer, I mean, I'm a military Navy person, but then look at the seafarer's point of view. They don't like weapons to be around them. So this is, I guess, we don't have an answer to this question. Thank you.
Oh, there's one more question over here.
I must thank Jayanath02 Admiral, because you know now this is very important something for us here in Sri Lanka, because maritime security has to be restored as far as concerned the future of the Sri Lanka. Because now so far what we have done is we have focused on maybe agriculture or garment industries and so on, where the returns to capital is less. Now there is a requirement of a mega project like ports and all these things, because Sri Lanka has an island enriched with maritime resources, and we need to go for mega project like ports and all that, and this will give us a more return to capital, and their maritime security is very important. Now you have brought down a very important something. I think we have to thank Admiral Colambage for bringing down this, and we need to invest more on this and give the security or give the guarantee for our country to go for mega investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we sincerely believe that it was the failure in the part of the Navy in the formative years of the terrorism that the army had to fight finally, because everything came from the sea. So we sincerely believe now we should not repeat the same mistake. Thank you for the comments.
Thank you, Admiral. Appreciate it.